one of the major themes that comes up again and again in the gospel lessons, and one that really makes, I think, Christianity and Jesus Christ and the gospel stand out from many other parts of the Old Testament, and also really from other religions and philosophies and faiths around the world, is this theme of forgiveness, which plays such a prominent role. And it's not just, this kind of good news isn't just about, well, you know, you have debts and God is going to forgive you what you owe, or He's going to, you know, forgive you and pardon the things that you've done. But there is this flip side, and it comes up several times. It comes up in this parable, and it comes up elsewhere in the Gospels. You know, like we say, you know, forgive us our trespasses as what in the Lord's Prayer? As we forgive those trespasses against us. So you have it there, and it's in several other places, very prominent, important places. This idea that our own forgiveness is somehow linked to our ability or our choice to forgive other people. Right? That you can't actually have forgiveness if you don't offer that forgiveness to somebody else. Now there's something else that functions the way that forgiveness does, and I think it's love, right? Love is one of those things that you can't have unless you what? Give it away, right? There's few things that work like that. But love is one of them, and forgiveness is another one of them. And you see, this is a parable, and parables are great because they're analogies, and they give us ways to understand something that, like forgiveness, which is kind of abstract and can be a little bit elusive. It's not like a cup or a bowl, something very concrete that we can put our hands on. But forgiveness needs something like a parable to help explain how it works. And so what we see here with this parable of forgiveness is not so much that God, when we don't forgive other people, He kind of rescinds His offer. But it's more like the law of gravity, right? It's like if you don't forgive, you can't be forgiven. The same way if you jump off a cliff, you will fall down to the bottom. Think of it another way. If someone wants to give you a gift, but your hands are full, right? You can't literally reach out and grab that box from them that they want to give you with something special in it. What do you have to do? You have to let go, right? You have to let go of what you're holding on to. And so in the same way, we can think of forgiveness in this way. That we have to let go of whatever resentments or remembrance of wrongs or whatever bitterness or hurts that we have. We have to let that go, right? In order to receive forgiveness. We have to open our hands up. And like I said, this isn't about God not granting it because you kind of like broke a rule, but that it's the way that your heart works. You have to create room in there for God's forgiveness. And so we should examine our own lives. And we should all think about someone we have in our life that maybe we haven't fully forgiven. And I understand that forgiveness is difficult. It's not like you can just will forgiveness sometimes. Especially if you've been severely hurt by somebody. You might want to, but it takes a long time to get to that point to give that forgiveness to somebody else. I mean, give it in a real, genuine way, right? We might say we forgive somebody, but we only forgive them 10%. And it's difficult. But we should examine ourselves because this is serious. If we have people in our lives whom we are not able to forgive, or we haven't forgiven, or if we find that we do not readily and easily give forgiveness to other people when they ask, or give it to people when they don't ask, then we're probably not realizing and fully receiving the forgiveness that we need. That's to say, you and I aren't forgiven if we're not out there forgiving other people. This forgiving is a process, and it takes time. But if we want to become people who are able to forgive, we have to make a habit of it, right? Forgiveness has to be something that we don't just do whenever we've been kind of gravely hurt, but it has to be something that we practice in all of our relationships. Because when it comes to relationships, you can't just prevent bad things from happening. You can't just kind of work really hard and make sure that you don't make any misstep in any relationship that you have. Because it's not going to happen. You have to be able to know how to mend relationships. And the number one way that we mend relationships is by forgiving and asking forgiveness. So that means we have to make a practice of apologizing, right? Of admitting our wrongs, and of forgiving other people even when they don't ask for it. So we live in a world that really doesn't like to forgive people. And I think that doesn't know how to forgive. You know, I've been in situations before with people where I've done something, you know, it's an argument or something wrong, and I try to make it up and I say, you know what, just, forgive me, I was in the wrong there. And what do people say when you say forgive me? What do they say? Do they say, I forgive you?
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Worst words you could say to somebody. Even if it's well-intentioned, because what you're doing is you're taking this opportunity for grace to happen, and you're just kind of throwing it off to the side. Don't deny somebody the blessing of being forgiven by you. We need it. We don't just need, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal, nothing happened, let's not think about it. You know what all that is? That's all avoidance. It's not really dealing with the issue. Because what really needs to happen is that that person needs to come to you and they need to show vulnerability. Admit that there was a real wrong and ask you to forgive them. And then you need to say these words: I forgive you. I forgive you. And if you've ever been in a situation where you are genuinely ashamed and feel deeply convicted about something that you did that you knew was wrong, the words of forgiveness are powerful in that moment for you. To truly be forgiven by somebody else is healing. And it's also liberating. Very emotionally, very deeply inside of who you are. And so, in our own household, we try to make it a practice. Even as a parent, if I know that I did something wrong, I yelled and I lost my temper and I kind of went overboard, say with Elias, right? I make a habit of making sure that I sit down with him, look him in the eyes, and I say, forgive me. We need to even ask forgiveness of our own children. And it has to be a regular practice. Those words have to be regular words on our lips. Forgive me, I forgive you. And if we're families that regularly practice this, what we're doing is we're training our children, we're training others in our family, we're training ourselves for other more deep and serious problems that might come along down the road. And this is why we come to church. This is why we have our faith and our religion, right? Is that this is a practice ground, right? If you wait until disaster strikes in your life to start practicing virtue, you're going to be in trouble. You have to start doing the work of your character now, every day, so that when something difficult happens, when a trial comes, when a temptation comes, you're ready for it. You have the internal hardware to manage some crisis in your life. And knowing how to forgive means knowing how to set things right, knowing how to fix things that are broken in our lives. But we live in this world, right, that doesn't like to forgive people. What happens when a public figure, think of all the politicians, right? Think of all the politicians who've done like really terrible things, what do we like to do? Do we ever forgive them, like say in the media or in the public, right? No. We like to shame them. We like to make them apologize, and then maybe even kind of like ruin their career and their life, right? And we all kind of like feel good about this, right? And it's like the Roman Colosseum. It's like we're coming to see someone get devoured by lions. We take this kind of sick pleasure in other people's destruction, right? Like why do people like American Idol so much? What's the one thing they like about it most? They like seeing those interviews where people come up and make idiots of themselves and they think they can sing but they can't, and then we can all kind of point and laugh at them. The whole phenomenon of reality TV the most common content is something where there's somebody whose life is so messed up that it makes your life feel better, right? Like maybe you've seen there's this show out there called Hoarders, right? And these people who like hoard stuff, right? Why do you watch that show, right? You watch it so that you can feel a little bit better about your messy house and think, wow, someone else has some more problems, so they're a little bit better off than me. And so there's this common, I think, theme here with all this in our culture that we don't know how to forgive others. And when people make mistakes, we like to kind of parade it over them or remind them about it, especially if there's someone in the public sphere. And so there's never any sort of public forgiveness of anything. And what happened after the Charleston shooting, right? You remember the 9 parishioners that were shot in the Charleston church? What did the families of those people do within a week's time? They forgave them. And what did the rest of the media do? They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do. You know what they did? They criticized it. Because they didn't understand it. Because most of them aren't people who know what it means to be forgiven by God and by other people. One of the best ways we can preach the good news is to go out in our life and to be people who are forgiven. Because forgiven people know how to love, know how to forgive, know how to serve others. Forgiven people bring a brightness and a beauty to the world that so often only knows how to devour each other when they're weak and down. The gospel message that Christ gives is that not only does God forgive you, but he wants you to go out and forgive people in the same way. Because that's how you know that you're forgiven. You see, if you're not able to forgive other people, that means that you have not fully received God's forgiveness and forgiven yourself together with God. Because if you have really accepted forgiveness, you know what you've done? You've humbled yourself, admitted that you're a sinner, and that there are things that are wrong with you. And you see, the only way that you can refuse to forgive other people is that you do not clearly see your own shortcomings. Because if we're really aware of our own failings, we can't hold things against people. It's just not possible. The hypocrisy is too potent. If we've humbled ourselves and admitted that, we're able to forgive. And if you're having a hard time forgiving somebody, maybe what you need to do, or I need to do, is to go back and examine our own relationship of forgiveness with God. And really evaluate, do we really believe that we're a sinner? Do we really believe that we have shortcomings? Do we really take our own failings and weaknesses seriously? Because if we're having a hard time forgiving somebody, we should recall our own shortcomings. Because if we do that, we're much more likely to pardon and forgive and to make space for other people to make mistakes. Let's remember this parable, because the key to our own forgiveness and our own life of freedom from guilt and shame and any of the memories and residual effects of our own misdeeds and past is precisely in being able to forgive other people. If we can forgive others, we will have the blessing. Lord Jesus Christ.
Lord.